On August 17, 2019, a group of far right-wing activists got together to organize a protest titled End Domestic Terrorism. They expected up to 1,000 people to show as they made their voices heard against the alleged terrorist group Antifa. Well, rest assured, Antifa did show, and outnumbered the protesters by a 2-to-1 margin. The rally ended with a handful of arrests and a Spartan warrior standing against a swarthy mongrel horde. Right-wing grifter Steven Crowder has recently made a video with the intent to do apologetics for right-wing extremism and to brand the anti-fascists as the real fascists for taking a stance against fascism, and a terrorist organization at that.
Generally speaking, fascism comes from the people who are wearing masks and want to beat the shit out of people who have a different opinion from them. And that is why this group needs to be defined as a terrorist organization. That is not at all hyperbolic.
Before we begin, I would just like to tell you all that Crowder is not anti-mainstream, that he is very much in the mainstream. He likes to advertise himself like he is some sort of independent content creator, but that is just one of the many lies that he likes to spin. In actuality, Crowder's channel appears to be funded by oligarch and owner of Conservative Review, Kerry Katz. In other words, he's a millionaire paid by billionaires to grift right-wing propaganda. So for those of you who think he's some sort of anti-mainstream conservative who tells it how it is and goes against the grain, think again. You're being lied to.
Do you think it's time to classify Antifa as a terrorist organization? And why? Do you support the president? I'm going to say, yeah. I do. I absolutely do. This is
It's fitting that you're an active supporter of a con man and a child fucker.
Bang it out!
Yes, the bang it out word
that
spoken by Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes. I have a dream.
Hammer.
Hey, no hammers!
No hammers?
No hammers,
Who has
bro.
to say that?
That hammer, by the way, belonged to the people whom were on that bus. He misplaced it trying to bash someone's skull in. Antifa was just being proper and returning the hammer back to its owner. By the way, for those of you who don't know, the American Guard were aboard that bus, a fascist organization that showed up in Portland just as quickly as they soon left.
Are important, but by the way, that's one thing. Whatever the left, they say no one has ever been killed by Antifa. Well, that's not true. But they haven't killed as many people because they just suck at it. Yeah. The guy had a hammer, a hammer and a window, and he couldn't do it.
First off, it's true. Antifa has literally never killed anyone. Unlike right-wing extremism, which makes up a solid majority of the terror attacks and politically motivated acts of mass murder in recent years. And secondly, listen to the thing that he just said.
But they haven't killed as many people because they just suck at it. Yeah. The guy had a hammer, a hammer.
Did Steven Crowder just brag about the fact that right-wing extremists are better at killing people than left-wing extremists?
We personally infiltrated Antifa, and they were handing out knives, brought sawed-off shotguns. We're talking about shooting people at a Ben Shapiro protest, and by the way, our footage led to some arrests.
You're gonna take the knife. How much of a...
Jeez.
I have like on the border between just a regular rifle and assault weapons.
What does that mean?
Right.
What is even his point here? That Antifa is willing to steal themselves at their own rallies and gatherings? Of course they're gonna come armed, dude. Anything could happen at these kind of events. Also, multiple Antifa cells getting together to do a rally isn't indicative of them having some sort of higher central governing party. They aren't Marxist-Leninists like me. There is no vanguard leading them. It's just a group of people motivated by their desire to make sure what happened to Germany in the 1930s doesn't happen to the United States in today.
Yet again, Antifa, not so adept at using hammers or cleaning their rifle.
Thank God.
Just get some Ballistol or Hops number 9, you asshole.
That's what you're mad about?
God, he's so annoying. Does anybody on Earth actually find this dude funny?
And there's the Dayton shooter, by the way, an Antifa member or supporter, likely both, who praised the ICE firebomber as a martyr.
That is a blatant lie. For one, there is no evidence that he had ties to Antifa, just that he supported their cause. And while the Dayton shooter's personal politics were definitely left-leaning, there is no evidence that his political beliefs are what motivated him to do the shooting. There is more evidence that the shooting was motivated by internalized misogyny than anything else. For one, the majority of his victims were female, and among them was his sister. For two, he had a rape list of women that he went to school with. For 3, he is on record for sexually abusing his girlfriend. And for 4, he was a member of a porno grind band, a genre of music with lyrics typically centered around mutilating women. Meanwhile, the El Paso shooter and the New Zealand mosque shooter posted fascist manifestos on the internet right before their respective acts of mass murder.
If you look at Antifa, the signs, the shirts, it says, if you vote for Trump, you're a racist.
Yeah.
So they're throwing everybody, including anyone who has a MAGA hat at their local church, as white supremacists, and that...
Interesting, because when polled, that is not what most of them actually think.
Any mass murders occurred from people who are actively members of the Proud Boys? How about Patriot Prayer? Because that's what we were talking about here in Portland. And I'm not in any gang, I guess, that's identified as a gang. Some people call it a gang, Proud Boys. I just think that you end up with some people who are looking for a bar fight and they won't leave until they have a fight. That being said, any mass murderers who declared themselves to be Proud Boys or in the name of Proud Boys.
First off, you didn't name one mass shooting committed by Antifa. And second, it doesn't matter what the group specifically has done because the Proud Boys, along with the Three Percenters, American Guard, Patriot Prayer, Anticom, and the rest of these groups all stand for and play defense for the very nationalism, xenophobia, and reactionary thought that radicalizes young men into committing hate crimes. The very same nationalism, xenophobia, and reactionary thought that groups like Antifa stand to combat and protest against. Once again, the data bears out the majority of hate crimes to be right-wing in nature, and the fact that Crowder here is playing defense for these groups, the fact that the Proud Boys stand in solidarity with white nationalists, white supremacists, theocrats, and Hitlerites, the fact that Joe Biggs himself has organized this rally with the intent to plant seeds for the president to shut down Antifa.
Go look at President Trump's Twitter. He talked about Portland, said he's watching Antifa. That's all we wanted. We wanted national attention on it. We got it. Mission success.
The fact that these right-wing nationalists were straight up inciting riots and making terroristic threats before the Portland rally.
Cops here. There's nothing. It's us against you. If you think you're as bad as you are, let's do it now. Let's get it over with. Because if not, I'm going to spend all this money to go to Portland to beat your fucking ass with over 1,000 people.
We have guns, niggas! We will never submit to you, mother. We will never submit to you. Y'all gonna get hurt.
And the only thing that I'm saying right now is if I can speak with this, I'm gonna speak with this. We're gonna answer with this. We're gonna answer with this.
Alphabetical city. So I'm gonna tell y'all right now, as soon as you see them in the hood, that's it. It's over for them.
Yep.
Don't give them no platforms. Don't let them rock. Beat blood out of them. Kill them. That's it.
Yeah, the only idea I don't like about it is fucking talking about running around killing people. That's the only thing I don't like.
You gotta stop it.
Yeah, but running around talking about killing people, man, that's not cool, shit, dude. Man.
Rally, I nearly ran you over with a car, and I don't feel bad about it one bit. You're lucky I didn't kill you, because I wouldn't feel any remorse. You shoot me with feces, you can't prove that you didn't put something in it, like HIV. I am going to shoot you. And here's where the best part of the odds is. I still have a chance to fight for my freedom in court. You don't have a chance to fight for your freedom, because you're fucking dead.
Part of it. You're really gonna be getting it. Okay? You're gonna be getting knives put into your throat. You're gonna be getting bullets put into your head if you don't stop this shit with us.
The fact that they themselves are willing to get violence in opposition to Antifa, a group dedicated to fighting fascism, all of this is the testimony that Steven Crowder himself and the rest of these groups are either fascists or fascist-leaning.
Sort of acts of violence, one of which is a very clear anti-police officer ideology.
All cops are bastards! ACAB! All cops are bastards! ACAB! All cops are bastards!
Oh, it's a new chant. That was a rough transition.
Not very organized.
Go
Yeah.
shoot yourself! Now don't be upset!
Wow.
My grievances with the police stem from the fact that they aren't actually here to protect and serve the people, but to protect private property and enforce bourgeois law. Want to know how I know they aren't on the people's side? Because when the revolution comes, they will be the first line of defense of the bourgeoisie against the propertyless classes. And even right now, the police routinely exercise injustices and terror against the propertyless, be it in civil asset forfeiture, which allows the cops to legally steal from you, the wanton murder and brutalizing of racial minorities, blacks in particular, the harassment of homeless people, or the fact that whenever these sort of rallies happen, they usually seem to be on the side of the chuds, oftentimes acting as armed protection or as an escort.
Go down the totem pole there, and after the Proud Boys left, Antifa just assaulted people who were passing by who they thought might be conservative.
Okay, so we have the guy in the black shirt, who is clearly backhanding and shoving this man out of the way. And then you see him cock his hand back while he's ready to strike the guy with the club. See that? Just a little tip of advice. If you're going to do propaganda piece about how unreasonably violent a political group is, it helps to cut out the part that clearly shows the other guy who started the fucking scuffle, you dumb.
Talking about terrorist organizations, the U.S. Federal regulations, they define domestic terrorism, okay, as the unlawful use or threatened use of force or violence by a group of individual based and operating entirely within the United States or Puerto Rico without foreign... Blah, blah, blah. So it does talk about, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. Does Antifa fit this definition? Absolutely.
It's not that simple. Antifa exists as a response to right-wing extremism, ultranationalism, xenophobia, and white supremacy. And mind you, the rise of the alt-right precedes an increase in Antifa activity. They are most definitely not a terrorist organization because, one, they aren't an organization. They're made up of decentralized bands, oftentimes of college students who want to take a militant stand against far-right extremism, which, once again, based on the data, is responsible for the majority of actual terrorist attacks which take place in this country. Antifa is nothing more than the product of a cultural response to a cultural problem, in the same way white blood cells and antibodies responds to a disease or a sickness in the body.
Not only do they fit the definition, keep in mind, terrorism, you don't necessarily have to commit violence. You have to instill terror. Antifa obviously does that, and then they go one step further and actually commit acts of violence.
That's the fucking point. The problem is that far-right extremism is a plague on the human psyche, and it has to be dealt with by somebody or combated somehow, lest we descend into barbarism.
These people are enemies of the United States. I think that's important to note. They're enemies of left, right, all American citizens who want to have a conversation.
No, they're just your enemy, because they seek to stomp out the very ideology that you subscribe to. From here on out, Crowder proceeds to show a brief compilation of news pundits on CNN making completely reasonable statements about Antifa's right to counter-protest far-right thought. And I don't care. Moving on.
So by his logic, they're beating the Republican out of us, essentially, by that logic.
Yes. To be a Republican is to be one who genuflects at the altar of capital and the status quo. And I'm not opposed to using political violence to shut down schools of thought that are ultimately divisive, harmful, and hold us back as a species. So yes, Republicans need to fuck off. From here, Crowder, the dunce and bad faith actor that he is, proceeds to equate Nazism with socialism.
That too, by the way. Antifa, anti-fascist, national, socialist. Stop with the wordplay! You really believe Nazis were socialists? Well, I don't know. Gun control, anti-free speech, higher taxes, national... Well, okay, well, listen.
You are a liar! None of those things have anything to do with socialism. Adolf Hitler respected and protected private property, utilized a combination of war economy and Keynesian economics to uplift Germany from depression, was in fact sponsored by Western corporations such as Ford, literally coins the term privatization, and purged all of the actual socialists from his party in the Night of Long Knives. And the name National Socialist German Workers' Party and red color flag was clearly designed for mass appeal.
Bastards, any of them. The white supremacists, right? I saw American History X. They should be worse than just walking through the streets and leaving.
Initially, they wanted to go there to beat down as many Antifa supporters as possible. Joe Biggs himself, along with other members of the Chud Patrol, were inciting violence, riot, and making terroristic threats. Nevertheless, Joe Biggs did get arrested by the police and went to jail for a couple of days for inciting a riot. It was only after his arrest, when he got out of jail, that he told his people on social media to tone down the violent rhetoric.
They were created as a response to Antifa violence.
Since you don't have any proof to substantiate that claim, it is safe to assume that you're lying. The Proud Boys started as another one of these white replacement, ultra-nationalistic organizations where alienated white men to go blame all of society's problems on the libs. They're also a huge proponent of political violence themselves, albeit for their own causes. Their founder, Gavin McKines himself, is a Nazi.
Fascism doesn't generally come from a president who lowers taxes, who deregulates, who supports free speech and wants an armed populace.
Wrong again. Donald Trump is not pro-free speech. He has frequently tried to sue people who have made fun of him in the past, from Bill Maher to The Onion. He is on record for saying that he wants to open up our libel laws so that oligarchs can sue the media. And as for being pro-big business and deregulation and pro-privatization, these are far-right policies, my friend. It's interesting to me how you neocons are opposed to big government, but you bend over backwards and genuflect to concentrated, unchecked private power. But then again, Crowder doesn't care. He enjoys receiving carry cats.
Generally speaking, fascism comes from the people who are wearing masks and want to beat the shit out of people who have a different opinion from them.
Clearly you don't know what fascism is. Or maybe you do. I don't know because you lie all the time. A note to the viewer, in my next video I will clearly lay out and define what fascism is. Stick in tight, it'll be a good watch.
And that is why this group needs to be defined as a terrorist organization. That is not at all hyperbolic. I want to see them behind bars, or at least on the Southern Poverty Law Center's list.
You heard it here, folks. Crowder wants to make protesting, counter-protesting, and culturally fighting fascism illegal. Now doesn't that sound like a fascistic policy? And now for my closing thoughts. Antifa is clearly not a terrorist organization. Aside from beating someone up, talking shit to cops, and some property destruction here and there, they haven't killed anyone, have no central organization or long-term political goals, they haven't robbed any banks, taken any billionaires hostage, blown up any police stations, or committed any acts that you can classify as terror. And that is because Antifa isn't one group. It is simply a position, an idea, an abstract human concept. If you're opposed to fascism to the point to where you want to go out of your way to fight it, then you are, by definition, Antifa. And Crowder's propaganda piece here and his statements about wanting them banned is pretty indicative as to whose team he's on.